What's up, guys, and welcome back. Today we're going to begin Unit 8, which is a project unit. So we're going to start talking about some statistical terminology. So your notes aren't very big. A lot of this is going to be done in spreadsheets. But we do have a little bit of stuff to fill out. So starting off, what is statistics? It's the science of collecting, organizing, and interpreting data. So, some terminology that we need to be familiar with. When we say that word data, we're referring to facts and statistics collected together so that we can reference or analyze something, some information. Um, Individuals in a statistical study would be like people, animals, or things. And then we have variables that attribute or property of the individual that can be assigned a value, expressed as a number, or by grouping. Um, And then lastly, we have distribution, which is viewing data as a whole rather than individual values. So we'll look at some of this stuff more in detail um, as we get through this quarter. But variables can be expressed as numerical or by categories. And we call these two types of variables quantitative and categorical variables. So quantitative just means numerical variables. We are not going to talk too much about that this unit. We're going to focus primarily on categorical variables, and because the way we represent and look at data is a little bit different, and what we can collect from that data and how we can analyze it can be different depending on what type of variables we're looking at. But this is primarily going to be categorical, but we're going to talk about how we can differentiate between the two today. So uh, quantitative variable, quantitative variables, the numerical ones, there's two types that we have within those, and like subgroups, if you will. There's continuous quantitative, and those would be something that would include decimals, and these would be things like the height of children, the weight of cars, the time you wake up in the morning. In other words, it's not just a whole number, speed of a train, something like that, temperature. And then you have discrete quantitative, which is, think about this as something that can be counted. So the number of children in a house, or the number of languages you speak, or the number of students sleeping in a class. So those would be considered quantitative. Categorical is going to be things like eye color, political party, so on and so forth. So we're going to look at this example, categorical or quantitative. And if you're doing this in class, I would just want you to write which one of these things are what. So if we look at these, we would say, even though Social Security number, I have this first, is an actual number, it defines you. It's basically like another way to say your name. Like that number is assigned directly towards you. So that would be considered categorical. Um, Blood pressure is going to be quantitative. Breed of dogs, think about the responses to this stuff, right? The breed of dogs, German Shepherd, whatever, that's going to be categorical. Age, that would be a number, so that would be quantitative. Gender would be categorical. Ethnicity, that would also be categorical. Weekly wage, meaning how much you make, that would be a number. Plane fares, meaning how much it costs to fly on a plane, also dealing with money, which is a number, so that would be quantitative. The type of car would be categorical. So let's look at the quantitative real quick. These are our two types that we talked about, discrete and continuous. Which one is which? So just ask yourself, can you count those? So students in a class can be counted. So that would be considered discrete. Children per family, that can also be counted. That would be discrete. You can't count the money you make in a lifetime. That would be continuous. Your weight is also something that can't be counted. Distance traveled, that's continuous as well. And then cars in a parking lot, that is something that you can count. So here's an example. Other than Social Security, what's another number that we? Because remember, numericals are quantitative. But what's another number? Because we saw that Social Security number was considered categorical. Um, what's another type of number that we would have that would be also considered categorical? I want you to think about that for a second, and then you can uh, pause the video. But here's some examples. A student ID number would be one. A jersey number of a sports player, right? There's only one person on that team that has that number, so that's that person. Um, so Suppose you are preparing to study the television viewing habits of students in your class. Describe two categorical variables and two quantitative variables that you might want to measure for each student. Give the unit of measurement for quantitative variables. So think about that real quick. If you're trying to study the television viewing habits, what are something that you might be interested in addressing or finding out something to be able to make some type of analysis? Um, for one, and these are just some examples, so the answers could vary. Like, do you have a job? Why does that matter? Well, I mean, if you have a job, you might not have as much time to watch TV. Um, do you have a preferred streaming platform? Um, do you have any extracurricular activities that would maybe prohibit you from watching as much TV as somebody else? So we're thinking about things um, that would help us maybe like study something later on in terms of like maybe questions that we're going to be asking, so we can look at television viewing habits with teenagers, for instance. Do you prefer movies or series? I know with me, series are more like binge watching, right? And so if you get hooked on a series, you can sit there and be watching that thing for hours and hours and hours. But if you're not really into that and you watch movies, and a 2 hour movie or an hour and a half movie is, I mean, you can watch that and you're done for the night, type of thing. So that would be all like categorical. If you think about the responses for that, do you have a job? Like, what would you say? Yes or no? Preferred streaming platform? What, Netflix? Hulu, things like that. Do you have extracurriculars? You can say that can be like a yes or no response. So those are categorical variables. Or you can actually give them like football or band, orchestra, things like that. Do you prefer movies or series? That would be uh, movies or series, or a yes or no type of response, categorical. Quantitative, you can be like asking them how many hours you spend streaming in a day. That response would be numerical. Um, maybe maybe you think that the time you spend watching TV affects your GPA because you're not studying as much as you should or could be. So that GPA is also numerical, quantitative. So consider the survey question: what is your eye color? This is an example of what type of variable. This would be categorical. So let's think about an example not already used of a survey question where the data from the survey can be considered categorical, continuous quantitative, or discrete quantitative. I would encourage you to kind of think about that. Once again, answers are going to vary, but what is something that could be considered any one of these? So if we look at categorical, I just had this, like, what is your favorite pizza topping? That would be an example. Continuous quantitative, how fast can you run a mile? And then discrete quantitative, how many fingers do you have? So that is day one of, not wrong class, wrong class. That is day one of this unit. We'll continue with the next part later on.